Our region has many challenges related to climate change, and we'll learn about the efforts that many local groups are taking to address the effects of climate change right here in the tri-state. That's coming up next on WNIN Newsmakers. Welcome, I'm Noah Alatza, the Chief Communications Officer at the University of Evansville. Climate change is a common headline in the national news, from the weather reports to how it can impact our health. Here to talk about climate change and its local effects is Dr. Edith Hardcastle. She's an Associate Professor of Biology at the University of Southern Indiana. Thanks so much for joining us today, Edie. We appreciate you making time.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. First, what are some of the effects of climate change here locally, right? We know that we are in this region where there are several coal-fired power plants surrounding us. We're oftentimes known on a national level as a sacrifice zone for sacrificing people's health and the environment as well. So if you could just walk through, how bad do you think climate change is here locally in the tri-state?
So climate change doesn't respect state boundaries, right? It's called global climate change really for a reason, because it has very broad effects, and the local power plants, of course, contribute a large amount of local air pollution. But one of the things that happens on a global scale is that we are pumping out 37 billion metric tons of carbon dioxide globally, and that has worldwide effects. And ironically, we're sitting here as Milton is barreling towards Tampa Bay. And so one of the things that all that extra carbon dioxide does is it makes a larger blanket on the atmosphere so that it's getting hotter and hotter each year. That warms the ocean temperatures, and that really supercharges these storms. And so that has impacts on everybody. Locally, that obviously also has large amounts of rainfall here when these big storms come in, but it also results in severe droughts, because one of the things that happens with climate change is that we get more intense everything.
Back to one of the points that you made regarding the carbon dioxide emissions, we're talking millions and millions of pounds of that being emitted into the atmosphere, those greenhouse gases. How does that not only, though, impact, as you just talked so eloquently about the environment, how does that not only impact the environment, how does that impact our overall health as humans?
So one of the things that happens with climate change is that we see that pests and diseases actually that had stayed in tropical areas more, we see those moving more north. So we get things like mosquito-borne diseases that we have never seen before here in the area. And we'll be seeing more of those as it becomes warmer. Another thing that affects people's health is simply heat. When people can't escape the heat, they die, honestly. And we are seeing more heat-related deaths. Now, of course, that becomes more severe in the Southwest United States, but we're seeing a lot of those intense heat stress effects here as well. And we'll be seeing more of those. I mean, we're in a new normal. This is the hottest year on record ever, but it'll be the coolest year that we'll see in our lifetimes. It's going to simply get hotter and hotter from here.
That's some extremely fascinating insights there, Edie. And we'll shift gears now, and I want to go on more of a positive note, right? Evansville was recently awarded their ordinances that give people more options to use native plants in their yards. So I wanted to talk to you about what are some of those changes and what are the benefits of using native plants on your property?
So we're talking about big global impacts with carbon output, and people feel helpless and perhaps tune out because they feel like there's nothing they can do about climate impacts. But there is, and that's the wonderful thing about thinking about your yard in a way that can positively influence the environment. We have 40 million acres of just turf grass lawn in the United States, and the amount of water inputs, pesticide inputs, fertilizer inputs that go into those 40 million acres have a huge impact on climate, not to mention all the gas-powered lawn equipment that goes into intensively maintaining those monocultures. It's thought that our gas-powered lawn equipment is actually contributing about 5% of the carbon emissions in the United States. So lots of people have had ideas about reducing the amount of that turf grass lawn. There's an organization called Homegrown National Park, which encourages people to think about their lawn not as a wall-to-wall carpet, but more like an area rug where they can maintain parts of their front yard in a beautiful lawn that they can, play and walk around on. But think about maybe converting half of that around the edges, maybe the backyards too, so that you can grow natives. Now, what that does is it reduces the amount of mowing and amount of carbon emission when you reduce the amount of mowing. But at the same time, more trees and shrubs and grasses that are native also pull carbon dioxide out of the air. And our native plants have huge amounts of their biomass below ground where you actually can't see them. More than half the plant of native plants are in these huge, massive root systems below ground where they're basically storing carbon dioxide out of the air and taking it out and reducing the amount of carbon.
Edie, for viewers at home, how do you know what is considered a native plant and then what might necessarily be invasive?
That's a great question. So we have so many resources now. So one of the places you can go is that we have an amazing Indiana Native Plant Society organization in the state. Almost all states have a Native Plant Society, and they maintain really easily accessible lists, not just of broadly native plants, but that ones that are easy to grow for homeowners, and also the native plants that are attractive, because when you're growing it in an urban area, you don't want to necessarily grow every native plant, because we have things I would mention like pokeweed that look very, very weedy. And even though they're providing essential ecosystem services like feeding caterpillars and berries for the birds, they don't tend to look good in urban areas. So the Indiana Native Plant Society is a great resource to come up with some of those beautiful native plant species that are more well-behaved.
And Edie, I wanted to talk with you about this recent designation that the University of Southern Indiana received. It's the Bee Campus designation. What does that mean?
So the Bee Campus is an organization that started in 2012 in Asheville, North Carolina. A lady, Phyllis Stiles, was trying to come up with a way to get her community really excited about protecting pollinators. And she came up with this idea of a bee city. And so she worked with her friends and neighbors and the city to establish Asheville as the first bee city in the United States. And all of this, it's really a great idea because all of us have a sort of understanding of the function of bees, how useful they are in pollinating our crops and in providing a lovely food source that we like to eat. But for instance, in Indiana, we don't just have the European honeybee. We have over 400 species of native bees that live in a solitary way, so they don't sting people, they don't live in big hives, but they are performing so many essential services like pollination to our native plants. And they can be this mascot or this ambassador, a way of reaching out and educating people about all the important pollinators, like butterflies and moths, and even birds pollinate our flowers and provide these important functions.
What a great initiative as we all work to try and clean up the environment and work toward a better climate just in general. Dr. Edith Hardcastle, Associate Professor of Biology at the University of Southern Indiana, thank you so much for making time.
Thank you so much, Noah.
Some groups are working locally to improve our environment, and the Evansville Climate Collaborative is trying to increase awareness and coordination with those groups. Lauren Norvell, director of the Evansville Climate Collaborative, joins us now to explain what it's all about. Lauren, thank you so much for being with us here today.
My pleasure.
Appreciate you making that time. So first, for our viewers at home, what is the Evansville Climate Collaborative?
So we are a city agency. It used to be called the Evansville Environmental Protection Agency, and it used to solely work on improving air quality and governing emissions. It was repurposed in 2024 to be called the Evansville Climate Collaborative because we want to have more of a collaborative effort and an incentivize doing the right thing to not only improve air quality, but also to prepare for climate changes.
You talk about that collaboration. What are some of the entities, agencies, organizations that you work with on a day-to-day basis in the tri-state?
We work with anyone that wants to help us improve sustainability of our region and wants to combat climate change. So we work with citizens, we work with citizen groups, we work with not-for-profits, businesses, regional organizations, and across city, county agencies, and also we work across the Midwest.
And Lauren, I'm curious, what are some of the recent successes the city has helped with in addressing climate change, even at a high level?
Well, we are just getting started. 2024 is when we repurposed the agency, and so we're just getting started. We're laying a lot of foundational groundwork for the work ahead. We are a very data-driven, our actions are very data-driven. So we're doing a lot of studies right now. We are conducting a community-wide greenhouse gas inventory, which just means we're looking at where our air emissions are coming from to try to prioritize where we can reduce those air emissions. And then we're revising our climate action plan, which is something cities usually do every 3 to 5 years. And we're trying to make our climate action plan a little more actionable and measurable and up to date. And we're also conducting audits on our municipal buildings and fleets to try to reduce energy costs and reduce air emissions from those transportation.
I'm curious about the climate action plan. What kind of goes into that? You said that they have to do it every 3 to 5 years, cities do. What does that process look like and entail?
So when we revise a climate action plan or make a climate action plan even, which most cities are doing these days, we actually look at the greenhouse gas emissions to see where we can reduce emissions because that's where you have the most positive impact on climate change to counter it, right? You get rid of those emissions, you're not contributing as much to climate change. But we're studying also the local environment as far as where can we make improvements. And it involves many stakeholders. Our original climate action plan used town halls and surveys and stakeholder groups, and we are taking that original data and using a new set of stakeholders to just revise what was originally written.
Let's talk about this Indiana Clean Community Award that the city received earlier this year. Can you speak about what that all involves?
Yeah, the Clean Community Award is a voluntary incentive program through the Indiana Department of Environmental Management, and they recognized Evansville as a clean community because we're proactively taking sustainability into account as we move forward. So basically, you know, we're already doing things like making a climate action plan and doing a greenhouse gas inventory, and we're also a Tree City USA, and we're also doing Talks Away events on a monthly basis. And I say we as in the whole city county area. So we're already doing good things to clean up our community, and we have a whole lot of more work to do, but at least we're getting recognized for getting started and being proactive and making that happen.
And for other residents, and particularly our viewers at home, Lauren, I'm curious, what are some of the ways that they can help with the impacts of climate change in general? Is it getting involved in an organization? Are there even just things that they can do on a day-to-day basis to really add up and make an impact?
Wow, that's a really big answer to address that question. Of course, every single person can make an impact in their daily choices in their daily lives, from you know how much they drive or what they drive to whether they recycle or compost at home to you know just their spending habits. And so everything that we do on a daily basis impacts the climate. So there's tons of information out there. You can Google anywhere and find information on what you can do on a daily basis to help counter climate change or to help improve your air quality, and how to prepare yourself for climate impacts that we're already seeing. So, like I said, it's anywhere you look out there on the internet, but just any little decisions you can make to create positive change in your daily lives will help.
And so, as you know, the Climate Collaborative and WNIN were recently awarded a grant to increase awareness about what some local groups are doing to combat climate change. Could you just talk a little bit about what that grant entails?
Yeah, so we're partnering with WNIN to administer a climate engagement grant through PBS, and the aim is to basically increase the public's awareness about climate change and the impacts that we are already seeing and expect to see in the future. In particular, we're trying to engage youth more, and so that grant is in effect right now, and we're working with WNIN to just identify stakeholders in the community that are doing work in sustainability or climate preparedness, and interviewing them and creating a video series to help document what's going on in our local community, because a lot of people don't know all that's going on. So that's one part of it, and then we're trying to engage youth through a creative media contest. We're actually trying to get them to talk about vehicle idling as one little tiny thing that they could be, that's relevant to them, right? They're young drivers. We thought that's really relevant to high school students, so let's get them involved. And so we've asked them to create PSA videos or public service announcement videos on the effects of vehicle idling, and also parking lot signs. There's a design contest to make signs that we might distribute all over high school and college parking lots, again, to increase public awareness of the effect of vehicle idling. So that's a contest we're pretty excited about. So those are the things that we're doing in that grant.
It's such important work, and I'm so glad that WNIN is proud to partner with the Climate Collaborative on that initiative.
I am too. It's an exciting, fun project, and honestly, if there's one thing we all need to be doing is we need to be talking more about climate, because we think about 70% of Americans are concerned or very concerned about climate change, but there's a misconception that only about 40% of them are. And so we tend to reserve ourselves in that kind of conversation. And so we have to start normalizing that conversation so that we can start normalizing acting on climate change. It's just something that we need to be talking about and making sure it's front and center.
Absolutely.
Every day.
Absolutely. Well, Lauren Norvell, thank you so much for making time, the director of the Evansville Climate Collaborative. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Attention high school students. Want to make a difference in your community and win cash prizes? WNIN and the Evansville Climate Collaborative invite you to join the Anti-Idling Campaign Contest. Create a public service video or design a parking lot sign that raises awareness about the harmful effects of vehicle idling. Your creativity can help protect our environment and promote responsible driving. The top entries will win up to $1,000. Submit your entry by November 1st and visit WNIN.org for details.
Here's a sample of the Healing the Heartland Climate Action Stories project that you will be seeing in the next few months.
I've always been really invested in protecting the environment around me, but I think trees are one of the best ways that we can improve climate change at a local level. I mean, climate change is a global problem, but decreasing carbon emissions a lot of times starts at the root of the problem, which is trees. Trees are the solution. Plants are the solution because plants consume carbon dioxide.
So one tree by itself is not going to save the whole city, but by planting a tree, you're adding to the overall picture of the urban forest and the overall benefits that urban forest provides. Every tree counts.
And I'm interning at the Department of Urban Forestry with the City of Evansville, working on a project where I do a canopy assessment for the City of Evansville, and then also plant 100 to 120 trees in underserved areas in Evansville.
Of course, there are areas that are more concrete than green, unfortunately, and in those areas we want to try to get more trees planted because we need more canopy to help cool our climate, to help clean our air, and to help cool our communities. The accumulation of all the trees help do that, as well as help intercept rainfall before it hits the ground and goes into our storm sewers. You know, we have to pay to manage our stormwater, and so trees can help prevent some stormwater from getting into our sewers and lessen the amount that we have to pay to manage.
We're actually weighting things like stormwater draining, urban heat island, also socio-demographic factors like educational attainment, race, and annual income. And so we're weighting all of that into one map, which will be a priority planting map.
Any urban heat island map that you look at the city of Evansville, Wesselman Woods is cooling down a big portion of the east side of Evansville. And this speaks to the importance of having green spaces and pocket forest throughout not just Evansville, but any city. Wesselman Woods is the largest urban old-growth forest in the United States. I like to say that this is the Mona Lisa of ecosystems. This is a rare space with an incredible amount of biodiversity, and we are just so fortunate to have it right here in the middle of Evansville. We're very fortunate to be working with the city of Evansville to reforest former Par 3 golf course in Wesselman Park.
And in those 75 acres, that's gonna be years and decades of tree growth. And with all that tree growth is carbon, right? We know that trees need carbon to survive, and so they sequester carbon. And over the years and years and decades, there's gonna be carbon that is stored within the trees, there's gonna be carbon that's stored within the soil, and as that forest matures, we can just, we can imagine that there's more and more carbon that's gonna be stored, making this place even more important than it is today.
In our region, we know we have a lot of work to do to increase our urban canopy. We're fortunate to have Wesselman Woods providing a lot of that urban canopy, but we still need to do a lot more work in many different areas of our city, our county, and just the region in general.
I think one of the best ways for people to sort of have grassroots climate action is to get involved with their local community, and a lot of times that starts at the neighborhood. And so getting involved with your neighborhood association, I think, is a really good way. And so by planting more trees, you're bringing down those carbon emissions, because the trees use carbon dioxide in photosynthesis. So by planting them in the city, you're helping globally, because you're bringing down the emissions in your city. It's a global problem that we can sort of think locally and get the benefits locally, but then also address climate change globally by bringing down carbon emissions.
Finally, we have Mike Gray with us. He's a multimedia producer and director right here at WNIN. He's been the one that's been spearheading the Climate Action Awareness Project. Mike, thank you so much for making time for us. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
So first and foremost, what made you so excited about this project?
I've always been interested in the climate. Even back in high school, I was in a conservation club. But hearing about that we had the chance to do this, living here, I know that there's a bit of an awareness, as Dr. Hardcastle and Lauren mentioned, that people are aware of this, but here actually regionally, we're around 10% less, polls say, aware of global warming than throughout the country. So there's a need here, I think, to raise awareness. The levels here aren't great for what they could be in the region. So hopefully, as we tell these stories, I realized we could kind of fill a need of trying to help our local environment. And of course, we know as we help locally, we can make a difference globally. Part of the grant that really excited me was the chance that not just bring in awareness, which I think is important, but there's a lot of that, but to show local examples of people really making an effort. I know the more I've worked with people volunteering and nonprofits here, it can be inspiring to hear people who are doing things. And hopefully we can inspire others too to make a difference.
Right, it's that grassroots approach, right? Seeing people on the ground and what they're doing on a day-to-day basis that makes an impact. I'm curious, Mike, too, just more broadly about some of the other topics that are going to be covered in these series of videos.
Yeah, I might leave some out, but we wanted to cover quite a few things, from energy, transportation, local food, agriculture, several things I'm probably not even thinking of right now, but lots of different topics. And hopefully people will find one they connect with more. Of course, we heard a little bit about gardening and native plants, but maybe you don't have a big lawn that you can repurpose. So we can think about how we get to and from places, how we consume things. I think waste is one that is pretty universal for people to consider. How much am I using? How can I reduce? So a broad array of topics.
When and where can people start to see some of these videos?
So I'm excited there's different ways we're going to put them out. October 21st, we're going to start putting them out through our digital team, so you'll see them on our website. on our YouTube channel, and other digital platforms that will choose to tell these different stories. There'll be more than a dozen short stories, and then some even other shorter ones on our social platforms will bounce around. But then on broadcast, on November 14th, we have the premiere of our longer version that will encapsulate a lot of these stories. And it's always fun in the edit to try to find ones to tell. There'll be even more than we can fit in, which I think is a good thing to say.
Education and informed public citizenry, it's always so important. That work is so critical. Mike, thanks for all of the work that you do. Mike Gray, our own, right here at WNIN, thank you for making time.
Thank you.
Thanks to all of our guests for joining us and letting us know more about climate change and the local initiatives that are combating those effects. I'm Noah Alatza, the Chief Communications Officer at the University of Evansville. Thanks for watching WNIN Newsmakers.